As the Apollo sits and waits to cross the Strait of Belle Isle to Labrador, residents of the Big Land are feeling the effects. Groceries, goods, and people are not moving. Now, the negative impact is starting to show throughout the communities that rely on the service. And this morning we have a business owner on the line, Trent O'Brien, and he lives in Lancelot. His auto business is in Forto. Good morning, Trent O'Brien.
Good morning.
Well, we have talked to a lot of frustrated passengers over the past few days and even last week. What is the mood like among the people you're talking to in your communities with all of these delays?
Well, I mean, anybody who's trying to travel is obviously frustrated. I mean, I spoke to some of the people who are stuck in St. Barb, and I mean, I listened to your story, and their stories are just unreal. I mean, they're out hundreds and thousands of dollars in some cases in hotel bills alone, and then that's not including the meals and whatnot. The financial cost to them is staggering. And then there was a story of the individuals trying to get home to visit their ill family. I mean, that's outrageous, especially the fact that the government hasn't stepped in to help these people in the way of any subsidies or flights. Because, I mean, as we've heard, all the flights both to and from Blanc have been booked pretty well solid. I know that also there are a number of students who were home on their spring break who were unable to return to their post-secondary because they couldn't get on the ferry, and they also could not get tickets to get onto any planes for flights.
And how is this affecting day-to-day life for people who are there in the Labrador Straits and just, I guess relying on that ferry to supply them with things like we mentioned, groceries and goods?
Well, I mean, I've spoken to several business owners here on the coast, and I mean, I know restaurants here that are basically sold out of chicken, which is their staple on their menu. There's a bakery in Lancelot, Dot's Bakery and Coffee Shop. It doesn't have any eggs left. So, I mean, how can you operate a bakery with no eggs? You can't bake anything. I mean, they also serve breakfast, so that's another thing that they can't provide while they're not getting the grocery items that they need. And, I mean, all the grocery store owners that I've spoken to are all their shelves are starting to get pretty bare. I mean, your poultry, your eggs, your dairy, everything is either close to its expiry date or already sold out. Bread is another thing that's getting short here on the coast. And when you look at it, most of the produce and the perishable foods sitting on the truck in St. Barb, they've already been notified is basically going to have to be dumped once it gets here because it's probably already either expired or spoiled due to the temperatures. My
goodness. And what about for your own business? You run an auto business and an auto body business as well. How is it affecting you to not have that ferry link?
Well, I mean, obviously, we've got customers who are currently down. Their vehicles are not running. No fault of theirs, no fault of ours, because we simply can't get the parts. I've got a load of freight sitting in St. Barb since last week that I can't get on the boat. So, I mean, I got customers who are waiting, and they're not happy. My concern is more for them than myself. I mean, they're bearing the brunt of it.
And do you think the quality of life for everyone there in the communities on the Labrador Straits is getting worse, with the Apollo being trapped in ice so much?
Well, I would say yes. I mean, some people have said to me how we're going backwards. Before we had this year-round ferry service, there was a local company here, Straight Air, which flew our freight back and forth across the straits. Once the government put on the 12-month ferry service, this company, Straight Air, closed up their winter operation. So, I mean, that's one more link that we had for getting these supplies that we no longer have as a result of this service. And, I mean, they've given us a service in name only because we don't have a vessel that's capable of doing the job. I mean, the Apollo is just simply not capable. Its ice class is not high enough. Its horsepower is not high enough. And on top of that, they've given us an icebreaker, which is only one ice class higher than the Apollo, and it's proven it's not able to do the job.
Now, Mr. O'Brien, I want to play a clip that we, of part of our interview that we had with the Minister of Transportation and Works, David Brazel, yesterday morning. Here's a bit of what he had to say.
We're going to the market now looking at a new process of providing service with new vessels and that for Labrador, which will have, a better enhanced ability to get through ice. But even in those cases, this is an extreme. We're looking at super ice class vessels that are needed. That wouldn't be in our resource ability to build something that into the $1 billion costing. What we will do is better coordinate. Now that we know that we're probably going to run into some struggles over the next number of years with ice flows, with the players that that are involved, the Coast Guard itself, the provider, the general public, about how we can provide that service. There may be, future disruptions. There's no doubt about that. It's again, and I reiterate, it's Mother Nature, and it's not just about the ice flows. It's about the extreme winds that we've had that have, compacted the pressure on the ice. Ice is not the biggest issue, the Coast Guard will tell you. It's about the pressure on that ice. So we've had, the perfect storm in a bad way when it came to our capacity in that area with the ice itself.
Well, there you have it. Minister Brazel pretty much saying that the new ferry that's going to replace the Apollo in a few years' time will also need an icebreaker when the ice is a problem. So what's your take on that, Mr. OBrien?
Well, I want to address a couple of the statements that he made. I don't think anyone here is going out and asking for, a roll-on, roll-off version of the Henry Larson. That vessel, I'll explain to you first, I guess, how the Arctic Ice Class system works. It goes from A5 to A1 and then to the D0. A5 being the highest ice class, A1 being the lowest, and D0 being no ice class. The current vessel, the Apollo, is an ice class A1. And then the vessel that's assisting it, the Anne Harvey, is an ice class A2. These super icebreakers, or super heavy-duty icebreakers, as he's calling them, they're all ice class A4 or A5. Simply what we're looking for a vessel that would be an Arctic ice class of A3 or A2. Not a vessel that can operate on its own 100% of the time, but a vessel that would not need as much icebreaker assistance, because we all know that the Canadian Coast Guard's fleet, it is aging, and they don't have a high number of what I would call icebreaking vessels. There's 3 heavy-duty icebreakers, and then there's a number of the high-endurance multitask vessels, which do have icebreaking capability. But, they've proven that they can't do the job here. And this is not really that much of an extreme winter. Yeah, in the last 5-6 years, we've only had 2-3 winters like this. But this is a common winter for us. This is an annual occurrence. We're operating in the north, and we need a ship that's equipped to do so.
So you'd like to see a vessel that's going to be able to operate on its own for the better part of the winter with only maybe a minimal amount of assistance from an icebreaker?
Yes, well, we need a vessel that's going to be able to provide the service that the government is telling us that we have. Otherwise, like I said, we're getting a service in name alone. And in order to do that, we need a vessel with 16,000 to 17,000 horsepower. There are other technologies on the icebreakers that we're not asking for. We're not asking for the extensive hull. The type of hull that they have is designed specifically to break ice. We're not asking for the water displacement system that they use to push ice away from the vessel. All we're asking for is a vessel with enough horsepower and hull strength that it can operate safely and effectively in the ice conditions for most of the year with moderate icebreaker assistance. And, there are going to be times, yes, there's always going to be times when you're going to need a heavy icebreaker. But, we need to move to a model where that is not the norm, where we're not relying on the heavy icebreaker for every single crossing, which is where we're at right now. If the Anne Harvey leaves or if the Terry Fox leaves, we're basically stranded. That vessel is not able to operate in these conditions. And, that's not fair to the people of Labrador, and everyone is feeling the pinch.
How much faith do you have that the province will, as the minister says, better coordinate with the Coast Guard in the future?
Well, they can try. But the Coast Guard has to put emergencies first. I understand that. And they have to put in some way I assume the St. Lawrence Seaway and whatnot. They have to put that first in a lot because there's a lot of traffic there. So you're trying to coordinate with an organization that simply doesn't have enough heavy vessels to do the job. And, it's going to be very difficult to do so. So I have faith that they're going to try, but I don't have very much faith that they're going to be successful.
Trent OBrien, thanks so much for your time this morning.
All right. Thank you.
That is Trent OBrien. He lives in Lansalou, and he was talking there about the difficulties now. He says restaurants sold out of chicken, bakery sold out of eggs, and his own freight waiting on the dock in St. Barb.